as an Apple Arcade exclusive, Oceanhorn 2 Knights of the Lost Realm is the prequel to the action-adventure game Oceanhorn Monsters of Uncharted Seas, which came out way back in 2013.
Indeed, Gem. Hex and Barjo actually reviewed that on PC and gave it 3 rubber chickens each. Oceanhorn 2, however, takes place 1,000 years before the events of the original. You play as a young, mostly silent hero who, with the help of his friends Trin and Jen, must unite the species of neighbouring lands in order to stop the Dark Army from throwing the world into chaos. Just another day in the life of a video game protagonist.
Yeah, we're not exactly treading new ground here, but it's a simple setup that moves things along at a good pace, and there's a good flow between missions. Combat is equally simplistic. You can switch between a collection of different weapons in the radial menu, or pick up ones dropped by fallen enemies. Once you're armed, you can go to town hacking, slashing, and occasionally dodging whatever comes your way. It's nice and easy to pick up, but I don't feel like it really evolved enough to keep my interest.
Yeah, there's not a lot of meat to these encounters outside of the main boss fights. And even those are very telegraphed and easy to beat once you've got the enemy's routine down. But I will say, I wouldn't have minded a bit more help from my so-called companions.
Guardian.
From the radial menu, you can command Trin and Jen to attack certain enemies, in theory. Instead, you'll often get them either standing around or swinging at thin air.
Mission accomplished.
Good job, guys. Thanks for the help.
At least they can be somewhat useful when it comes to puzzle solving.
Trin.
You're given time to get familiar with the basic concepts early on, like hitting levers or weighing down floor tiles to trigger events. You're later given a magical blaster that allows you to cast spells to navigate and overcome obstacles, like channeling electricity into antennae to unlock gates, or creating ice platforms to cross large areas of water.
They're not very challenging though, and I could have done with a little bit more variety. But I will say you're never stuck wondering what you're meant to do next. You know you have what you need, and it's just about applying the solution in the right way, which is something I really value.
I think there were a few times when I actually put too much thought into the solution and completely missed the most obvious answer.
Something I was curious about is how you two found the similarities between Oceanhorn 2 and The Legend of Zelda. I recall the original being quite heavily inspired by it from a gameplay and stylistic perspective.
There is definitely some overlap between this and Breath of the Wild, even down to our main character's appearance, and the insistence that I smash as many pots as possible. But I don't think these similarities are necessarily a bad thing. While it's not as polished or as dense as The Legend of Zelda, the pieces it has adapted and made its own work. And visually, Oceanhorn 2 is gorgeous, with some very unique landscapes that I really enjoyed getting to explore.
Yeah, it looks really charming. But the problem for me is that because Breath of the Wild is so good, the shortcomings in Oceanhorn stand out that much more. But at the same time, we've got to remember that's comparing a AAA title with a massive budget to a mobile game from a smaller studio. So it's not really fair to judge Oceanhorn based on that.
Exactly. I will say the only thing that really annoyed me here was the control layout. We played Oceanhorn 2 on an iPad, and maybe it was because of my big thumbs and small hands, but I found I was constantly bumping buttons accidentally while trying to get around, which made for a very frustrating time.
With my onboard neural network system, I had no such problems, but I can see how that would affect your enjoyment. For spawnlings at home, I would suggest playing with a supported wireless controller or on a compatible television instead of using the touchscreen. However, that does take away the fun of gaming on the go.
See, I didn't find it challenging enough to keep me invested long term, but for some simple, fun action puzzling, Oceanhorn 2 is worth a play, if you have Apple Arcade. I'm giving it 3 out of 5 rubber chickens.
Despite my issues with the controls, I did enjoy my time here. The environments are gorgeous. The characters, though sometimes useless, are fun to be around, and there's boatloads of treasure to discover for the explorers out there.
Yeah.
So I'm giving Oceanhorn 2 3.5 out of 5 rubber chickens.